The first order of business is to stand with us and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call, please.
Connie Williams.
Here.
Jim Garventa.
Here.
Matt Hawkins.
Here.
Mark Thomas.
Here.
George Segarini.
Here.
Speaker is here. Administrator Tim Miller.
Here.
Our interim city engineer is absent. Attorney Dennis White.
Here.
Administrative Services Director Jennifer Callaway. Fire Chief Amy New. Here. Acting Police Chief Turu Vanderweel.
Here.
Community Development Director Rochelle Calla.
Here. City clerk's report on agenda posting.
At 4:45 p.m. on the 14th day of September 2017, the agenda for this meeting was posted outside City Hall for public view.
Approval of the agenda. Does the council have anything that needs to be added or deleted, changed, etc.? Any public comment? Then we'll move on to presentations. This evening we have the introduction and swearing in of intern firefighter Scott Burrows. Chief New.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, members of the public. Tonight, there's no action needed on this item, and it is actually my great honor to introduce another one of our firefighters to the City Council and the public. Sonora Fire Department advertised and tested for the position of firefighter intern for A shift, and we had Scott Barrows apply for the position. He successfully completed all the testing and requirements for the position, including an extensive background and investigation before appointed to the position. So if I could have Scott come up, I'm going to read a little bit about him. So this is Scott Burrows. He was born in Ventura, California in 1998, where he lived until he was about 3 years old. At 4 years old, him and his parents moved to Northern California, and he's been here ever since. He currently lives with his mom and dad, his 2 younger sisters, Maddie and Amber. Scott's hobbies include camping, fishing, and snowboarding. And as a young kid, he tried a lot of sports and decided that baseball was his favorite. That's good, I like baseball. He played baseball for 13 years and enjoyed every bit of it. He also played football for a few years as well. Scott decided that he had to change his priorities around a little bit when he was introduced to bills and figured out he needed a way to pay for them, so he focused on a job. He worked in the food service since 2012, starting in a small cafe that his parents owned, and then worked his way up to a server position at a local sushi restaurant. His senior year of high school, he completed some ride-alongs with a few different fire departments, and he loved every minute of it, and he decided that he wanted to become a firefighter. After graduating high school, he obtained his emergency medical technician certification and completed the accredited fire academy at Columbia College. And again, he applied for our position and was our #1 choice, and we want to welcome him aboard. So if I could have you stand over here, I'm going to swear you in. I'm going to have you hold your right hand up, face me. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Scott Burrows,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
and I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the State of California,
and the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties
Upon which I'm
upon which I'm about to enter.
Awesome, congratulations. Scott is joined here with his family, his mom and dad, and his girlfriend, and his dad, Eric Burrows, is a captain with the Stockton Fire Department, and he's going to pin his badge. Would you like to say anything? Say a few words. You've got the mic.
Thank you very much.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome to our fire department, and if you mentioned it, Chief knew, I want to mention it again. Scott also has a medical technician certification, and this is one more student of the Columbia College Fire Academy that has come to us, and it's a great thing that we have that academy close by. It'd be wonderful if we could have a police academy out there as well. I've said that now for quite a while, and maybe one of these days it'll happen. But anyway, welcome. Item E is public comment, which is non-agenda items. The public may address the council on any item of public interest, not otherwise on the agenda, that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Is there anyone who would like to address the council? If so, please come forward.
I'm Bill Edwards, 46 Summit Avenue, Sonora. I would like to suggest that the police department assign an officer to the intersection of Greeley Road and Monoway. The traffic gets backed up almost all the way back to the intersection near McDonald's. And I've heard some people complain that they really don't even have time to go out for their 30 or 45-minute lunch because they get tied up in the traffic. So I think they should give that some consideration.
Okay, thank you for that.
Madam City Council Chairwoman and all City Council members, good evening. My name is Yvonne Lyons. I am here this evening to thank you for forming the Homeless Task Force. The issues of homeless are large and will not be resolved quickly, if ever. I am homeless and I struggle with the stigma the homeless encounter every day. Granted, some of the stigma is earned, but much of it is lumped into generalities. Hopefully your task force will be able to work on the issues in a balanced and win-win environment that satisfies the majority of the emergents and is fair to the homeless. Educating the community via the task force may be a start. Hopefully they will be able to actually listen, hear, and understand our plight, whether being self-inflicted, mentally, and/or physical issues, circumstantial or economically related. In turn, maybe the will listen and respect the merchants. We don't really know what to do either. Most of us try to follow the rules, and a very small grouping of the homeless disrespect what is available to us. I don't know how their thinking will change, but at least this will be an opportunity to try and understand both sides. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Ryan Scheller. I own Sound Extreme Productions. We're an event company that provides services for over 400 events a year. This is just a recommendation. I was recently involved in just kind of a process of trying to put on an event for the end of October, an event we've been doing for 17 years. The whole entire process started about 6 weeks ago, and the information that I was given has been it wasn't given to me up front of everything that I needed. So the special event application, and then I was told I needed an application for you, and then I was told it was just a letter to be put on an agenda. So my recommendation is maybe come up with some sort of a packet that explains the process to produce an event within the city limits. Each email that I receive from a city member has something new that I need to provide to them. So over the past 4 to 5 weeks, it's been, oh, you need to provide this. Oh, you need to provide this. If that was all stated 4 to 5 weeks ago when I started the process, we could have got the process moving. Now I'm forced to kind of cancel the event, and in 17 years of doing this event, it'll be our first year not having it. I wanted to bring the event to the downtown area in conjunction with another business and just bring more people to this community instead of doing it in Twain Harte or Jamestown and some of the other areas. It's a great Halloween costume party and event, pulls 250 to 500 people each year, and I think it'd be a great event. So we might look at doing it next year, but I just wanted to recommend maybe a smoother process for that. Some sort of a packet that lists everything that Sonora City Police Department needs, that you need, that everybody needs, because each time I receive an email from someone, it's, oh, you need this, you need this. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for some great events in the city. We have a lot of businesses that are trying to do a lot of great things around here. And I think we just need to kind of streamline that process a little more.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be voted on in one motion unless a council member or member of the public has a question or wishes to discuss an item. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Item number 1 is to approve the following meeting minutes: City Council open session meeting of September 5th, 2017. Item number 2 is approval to pay invoices of previously budgeted expenses on September 19th, 2017. Item number 3 is the approval of disbursements in the amount of $138,146.58 on September 15th, 2017 for payroll, inclusive of employee salaries, employer and employee taxes and retirement contributions, and miscellaneous voluntary employee deductions.
Madam Mayor, I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay. Any other comments or questions by the council? Any public comment? Then I'll bring it back to the council for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item number 1 is consideration of the mayor's business member appointment to the Homeless Task Force and confirmation by the City Council. I believe we'll have staff report first.
Yes, Madam Mayor. You have in your packet a memo that I've prepared and the notice that was published to solicit additional applications as you had directed for the business member appointment on the Homeless Task Force. There were 6 applications that were received. One was not qualified because of your requirement for a business license. The applications have been reviewed by the mayor, and the mayor is recommending Mary Ann Wright of Tar Flat, Sonora. And you must have had made the copies for the application?
I did.
Since you had the packet.
Since I had all the applications.
So you do have before you the application that was submitted for reference for additional information about Ms. Wright's background and business involvement. Any appointment like this to a commission requires the confirmation of the council. Mayor is recommending that the applicant be appointed and confirmed by the council.
Thank you. Each of you have a copy of Mary Ann Wright's application and a copy of her business license. There are additional copies here on the next to Attorney White, if anybody would like to have one. And additionally, I have talked personally with every one of the applicants, and I have to say that each and every one of them said that Mary Ann Wright was the best choice as far as they were concerned. So you got a recommendation from everybody that applied, Mary Ann. So I thought maybe all of you would like to know that. Okay, so any discussion?
I just wanted to say it's kind of funny because I ran into some business owners and some other people, and the first thing that they commented about Mary Ann was that she's very fair, and that I heard a lot of that. So you need to know that.
Well, on that note, you have the recommendation for the appointment. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to confirm the mayor's appointment.
I'll second it.
Okay, I will. Any other comment by the council? Any public comment?
Jeanette Lambert from the Community Drop-In Center. It's not regarding her. Could I speak to this business of having an alternate for serving on that, or not at this time?
Not at this time. I
Okay.
think that it's not agendized for tonight.
So if they have an alternate, then the council will consider alternates. If they have an alternate they want to consider, get it to my office. We'll get that person on the agenda for confirmation.
Okay, Mr. Miller, you need to pull your microphone closer because we can't hear you.
So the council has authorized in their last motion at their last meeting to accept alternates for the two business categories, not business, but the charitable organization and the public agency categories. If there are, if those agencies want to propose an alternate, then get those names to me, and we'll agendize that confirmation before the council when we have that, an application from those individuals.
Do the alternates have to apply as well?
They should fill out the same type of application, so you have the same information. Not that they're competing, but just that we have an application on file.
Okay. I think that maybe at the last meeting, and I know this isn't agendized, but some of the task force members were allowed an alternate and some were not. And I think that was a little confusing as to why.
Well, the motion was stated by Council Member Segarini and confirmed by the council, so I don't know that there's a lot to, or approved by the council, I don't know if there's a lot to discuss with regard to the appointments.
Okay, at this time, based upon the decisions that were made, if any of the members of the agencies that will have alternates need to have them fill out one of the applications as the members did, so it's on file. And this is something that you all can also discuss at your first meeting. And we can agendize this for another meeting?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, one of the things, if you want to deal with this issue specifically or revisit it, we would need to put it on a future agenda. Even if we had discussion, we couldn't take any action on it tonight because it's not agendized for action. And the reason we haven't filled out applications is because we need to keep that in their file for when they file their Form 700s and statements of economic interest. Even if they're acting on behalf of a charitable organization, the individual who's going to be who's authorized to do it on behalf of that organization or entity has to file their own Form 700, which is a statement of economic interest.
Okay, I was just asking if it could be on the agendized so that we could discuss this further, because I have some real questions about this.
Okay, yeah. We can. Also, we need to probably agendize the committee to determine when their first meeting is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Do we do that? Because since we didn't agendize it for this meeting?
Yeah. I think on the marijuana working group, I think the council members set the first meeting date. So
okay.
That would be.
Do we need to agendize that, or can we do this?
No, it'd have to be on the.
Can we do that this evening?
No, it'd have to be on the agenda.
All right, then we'll put both the alternate question on the agenda and the setting of the first meeting of the Homeless Task Force on the next council agenda, which will be October the 2nd? Is that correct?
Thank you.
Yes.
Will that be October 2nd? Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other public comment about the appointment of Mary Ann Wright? Seeing none, then I'll bring it back to the council for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Wright, for participating. And I also want to say that we received 21 applications the first time around. This time we received 6 applications. So there are many people who are interested in the issues that take place here in the city of Sonora. And we thank everybody who came to the council with any comments, including this evening, and look forward to this group getting together and coming up with some type of a solution for our community that's going to work for everyone. Okay, we will move on to public hearings, which this evening we have none. Next item is new business. Item number 1 is consideration to adopt resolution number 09-18-2017-A, authorizing the closure of State Route 49, Washington Street, and various other city streets to accommodate the Sonora Union High School District Homecoming Parade on Friday, October the 13th. Acting Chief Vanderwill.
Madam Mayor, Honorable Council, I am here tonight on behalf of the Police Department and cooperation with Sonora High School, requesting that you approve Resolution 9-18-2017-A, allowing temporary road closures on October 13th between 2:15 and 3 p.m. to allow for the Sonora High School annual homecoming parade. Each year, they conduct this parade through downtown Sonora, utilizing parts of State Route 49, which would be between Snell Street and Stockton Road. And the parade will enter Snell Street from School Street, which will require a closure on Snell Street. The parade will continue to State Route 49, which is North Washington Street, down to Stockton Road, take a right on Stockton Road, and as in the past, take another right on Green Street, which will require closures there as well. For a brief presentation, the Golden Regiment will stop at the park and do a performance there, and then the police department would then escort the remainder of the parade back to its starting point, which was School Street. Due to the size of this parade and the fact that we are interrupting traffic on State Route 49, a resolution is required to move forward with it.
Okay. Well, it's an annual event and a great one for the high school. So any questions or comments by the council for Acting Chief Vanderwill? Any public comment? I'll bring it back to the council for a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move on to adopt resolution number 09-18-2017-8.
Second.
Okay. Any other conversation by the council? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. And I'm sorry that I'm not going to be here this year for the parade, but I'll be out of town. So enjoy, and hope it's the best one that they've ever had. Is it Caulfield Park or Courthouse Park?
I'm sorry, did I say Caulfield? Courthouse Park.
It'll be at
Courthouse Park, yes.
Park? Okay, just so the general public knows they come down and listen to the Golden Regiment Band. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, consideration of the mayor's appointment to the Planning Commission and confirmation by the City Council. Staff report. Ms. Kellogg.
Thank you. So unfortunately, as you guys are very well aware, Darren Eaton has moved out of the city. He is now living in Jamestown.
Shame on him.
I know. He was a great planning commissioner. And so because of that, he could no longer serve on the planning commission, and he had to be replaced. So we did published a notice in the Union Democrat on August 2nd with an application due date of September 1st. We did receive one application for the position. and that is from Kevin Anderson. Kevin Anderson is a city resident. He actually lives in the Cutler House. He's one of the caretakers for the Cutler property for the Dragoon Gulch. So he is interested, and he comes with an open mind and just wants to do service to the community. So staff is recommending that he be appointed by the mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions or comments for staff?
Rochelle actually said it, that he does live in the city. I just noticed the street address was a 5-digit number.
Right. There's one of the few exceptions, but it definitely, he lives on city property, so he definitely lives in the city.
And the reason for that 5-digit number is because the entrance into the property.
Well, we annexed that property into the city when the city purchased it for the trail, so it was in the county previously when it was addressed.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments by the council for staff? Any public comment? Then I'll bring it back to the council for a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll move for approval of your appointment to the Planning Commission, and I would like to thank Mr. Eaton for his service on the Planning Commission. He was a good one. Sorry to see him have to move on, but it is what it is. Yeah. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion by the council? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Is Mr. Anderson here this evening?
I didn't see him here tonight.
Okay.
He was at the meeting the other night, though.
Yes, he was. And it's great that Mr. Anderson applied, and we hope that more people get involved in local government. Item number 3 is consideration to approve the use of Caulfield parking lot located on Green Street south of Stockton Road by Green Street Beer LLC for the placement of a PG&E transformer, grease interceptor, bike rack, and related utility services in consideration for reconstructing the parking lot. Staff report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and for those in the audience that want a copy of the plan that would show the improvements, there's some copies here if you want to pick one up. And there's also a display there on the wall. The city has received a request from Trado Restaurant Corporation, a copy of their letters attached, to allow them to use a portion of the Koffel parking lot, and it's called the Koffel lot because it was donated by the Koffel family, not to be confused with Koffel Park, which was also donated by the family. But it is that lot on Green Street, just south of Stockton Road. But to allow the installation of a PG&E transformer, which would be above ground, and a grease interceptor, which would be below grade, as well as a bike rack, and then additional sewer, water, electrical, and propane services that would extend through the property. In consideration of that, they are proposing to basically reconstruct the parking lot. That would include ultimately repaving the entire lot, but prior to doing that, installing curb, gutter, and sidewalk and driveway improvements along Green Street, a sidewalk adjacent to the building, replacing curbing for the landscaping and curbing to the west of the lot. And as they reconfigured and restripe it, there would be 2 handicap parking spaces, but there will be 2 parking spaces eliminated within that parking area. And those are summarized in terms of what the configuration of the parking spaces would be, or as on page 2 of the letter submitted by the applicant. The preliminary estimate of the cost of those improvements is approximately $110,000. The actual construction of those improvements would be through an encroachment permit. To allow the PG&E transformer, PG&E requires an easement, and there is their Their draft of that easement's been attached and included in your packet. And the other improvements will be addressed through an agreement that the city attorney will need to prepare. And we're asking for a $2,500 deposit for costs associated with that. This request had gone to the Public Works Committee and was recommended that the council approve the request. So you have in your packet the letter, the cost summary, and the PG&E easement document. You have on the exhibit the proposed construction improvements. There's representatives of Trado Corporation here to address, and their engineer, to address the specifics of their request. If you have questions, we are recommending that it be approved, and that the motion would be that the mayor authorize, not the mayor, that the council authorize the mayor to execute the grant of easement to PG&E, subject to the city engineer's review. He has not had a chance to review the document for its accuracy. It just came in last Thursday. And to authorize me as city administrator to execute an agreement as prepared by the city attorney addressing the improvements that they want to install and the other utility services that would be crossing the property. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions that the council may have.
Any questions by the council for staff?
I don't know if I should ask you or the applicant.
Well, we can start here, and if I can't answer it, I'm sure.
Just some curious questions. Were these placements a part of the original concept, or are these different from what they originally planned?
I don't know how it compares to the original site plan. I'm not aware that they were proposing improvements on the city property when the original site plan was considered, with one exception, and there was a condition that, and it relates to the storm drain manhole, which is currently inside the building. The condition required that we either have access to that manhole in the building or that they relocate that improvement within the parking lot. But that's a planning review matter, and I don't recall any of the. But Rochelle could answer that if they were part of the original site plan submittal. And there's been various things that had been talked about with Trado Corporation regarding what improvements may or may not be within the parking area if they were to use it, but it's been limited essentially to the transformer, which would impact a parking space, and the underground grease interceptor, which it's got a traffic lid, so it doesn't eliminate any parking in and of itself.
I can answer the one question. This project was not subject to site plan review based on the project, what they were doing on the site. It was strictly a design review. So the design review of it would not have been a site plan of where all the particular items would have been placed. So it was strictly the design review of the new building or the building renovation.
Okay. The PG&E easement goes all the way across the parking lot, if I'm reading it right.
You are. It runs along the north side of the parking lot, and then from the transformer runs, and then it runs to the building from the transformer location, whatever direction that is. Runs to the south.
On the west side.
Yeah. So it runs from the north side to the south side at the west end of the parking lot to provide the service to the building in an L shape.
And so it doesn't run east and west like it shows on here?
Well, it runs along the north side in an east to west direction.
Okay.
And then from the transformer location, it runs along the west side from a north to south direction.
The plan here shows the trash enclosure. Is that for the business?
That's for the business, and based on this drawing, it's being proposed on property under the ownership of Bank of America.
Okay, that was going to be my question. I thought that was Bank of America, so they have to work that out between themselves and Bank of America.
That's correct.
And last question was, do we have a time frame for reviewing of the parking
In my last conversation with the applicant, they would like to start it as soon as possible and try and beat the weather, which is a very optimistic and aggressive schedule.
Well, maybe the weather will cooperate.
Oh, we hope so. We have our own street project underway.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for staff by the council? The only question I have is, after re-looking at this, on the Boyer proposal, I don't know if if restriping is included in the grading and paving of the parking lot.
The parking lot will be restriped.
Okay, so on the description, grading and paving parking lot, that includes restriping, because I don't see it listed on Boyer's construction.
This isn't a detailed construction estimate. It's just a preliminary estimate of the general cost.
Okay.
But that will be a part of their encroachment permit approval.
And, okay, so restriping will be included then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments by the council? Any public comment? Please come to the podium.
I'm not a very good public speaker, so I'd like to actually give you a letter at some point, but I'll start out.
Okay. You want to pull the microphone up?
Sure.
There you go.
Just to get myself straight, in your memorandum, it talks about, where you advertised this meeting, it talks about the Trader Restaurant Corporation representing 55 Properties LLC, but in the stuff that I have here, it says consideration of Green Street Beer LLC. Do you know who's actually applying for this?
Mr. Miller, were you?
The representative we're dealing with is Trado Restaurant Corporation. The entity that will be doing the improvements, I've told, is 55 Properties LLC, and the developer of the beer garden is the Green Street Beer LLC. So what's important to the council and to the city is who we have on the agreement with respect to the improvements and with respect to who we're granting the rights to. And at this point, I'm told that is 55 Properties LLC.
Okay. I have a few comments. PG&E is not in the bike rack, grease interceptor, sewer, or propane business, so I'm assuming that the easement is actually for the benefit of 55 Properties LLC. Let's see. The letter to you from Mr. Miller mentions, in benefit of the city of Sonora, the fact that 55 Properties will be paying for the updating of the present city parking lot. I pass that lot every day, and I parked in it frequently while attending Stage 3 productions. Until the restaurant consideration began, the parking lot was in near-perfect condition. Any present damage to the lot must have been a result of the construction, and I think the contractor or owner should shoulder the expense to restore it to the original. And then in general, I will hand this off, and perhaps somebody else can read it in, because like I said, I'm not good at it. But in general, I think that Trado or 55 Properties, Inc., is getting something from the city for very little money and basically promising to pay for stuff that they already should be paying for under their construction. Another item that I brought up is that I've been in construction for many, many years, and it's unusual to me that a project would get this far without the city ever asking, where's your sewers, where's your electricity, where's your garbage going to go? So somebody must have known a long time ago that they would need the city parking lot, and why didn't they put it on their own property like everybody else in the city has to put it on their own property? So anyway, here's the letter that I'd like to put into the record.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Ruben Schonside from Land and Structure. We've been working with the applicant on the planning process and the design process throughout this project. I think the introductions covered most of the information. I'd be willing to answer any questions, or if you have any other questions or concerns.
Questions by the council for the applicant?
Just kind of throwing out there, I mean, the parking lot is old. Is that correct? It hasn't been paved in years from your assessment of...
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been, but it's definitely been, there's evidence of trench work that's been done through that parking lot that's been patched. The striping is not new. It's worn out in a lot of areas. There's an existing TUD sewer line that runs through the middle of that parking lot. There's existing electrical lines that run underneath it, and you know, a lot of the curbs along the landscape area are broken and cracked. The pavement itself is fairly well alligated, so I'd say it's been a while.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate here a little bit. I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. So the parking lot is far from perfect. I mean, I've walked the parking lots. I'm downtown all the time. I live downtown. So, I mean, we're looking at grading and paving the parking lot, actually putting in 2 ADA accessibles where there are accessible parking spaces where there are 0 now, correct?
That's correct. So from a city point of view, the accessible access via sidewalks to the parking lot is going to be improved, as is the accessible parking that'll be located in there that'll be for public use.
And we're going to get, I mean, obviously taking care of the parking lot is going to benefit not only the city, but benefit the business that's spending several $1 million investing in our downtown, who believes in our downtown. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but so we're taking a parking lot that is far from perfect, improving upon it, and actually putting 2 ADA accessible parking spaces so people with disabilities can actually go to that business or other businesses downtown using the city's parking lot.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments by the council? And I also want to make note that the sidewalk that is there today is going to be an ADA compliant sidewalk, and that'll be a city sidewalk, correct?
That's correct. Yep. And part of the reason that it has taken this long to get to the council with this proposal is that there's been a lot of negotiations and the design process with PG&E as far as what the power requirements were for this building and what size transformer and whether that could be underground or it had to be above ground and where that was to be located has taken a long time. Anybody who's in the planning process at the moment and dealing with PG&E will have experienced 6 to 8 to 12 month delays in their design process. So it's taken a long time for all of the sizing and placement of these different pieces of equipment to get figured out.
And currently, this is a permitted parking lot from until 5 o'clock in the evening, correct?
Yes, it's a permitted parking lot. Approximately 1/2 of the spaces are under permit.
And when this work is completed, then it'll still be a permitted parking lot until 5 o'clock in the evening, but during the day, the ADA parking spots will be available to the general public, correct?
They are available without permit. That's correct.
All right.
Well, let me rephrase that. They're available without a city permit. You have to have a handicap parking permit to park there.
You have to have a different type of a permit to park in the ADA parking spaces. Okay. Just so the general public knows that it is a permitted parking lot today until 5 o'clock in the evening, and then anyone can park there, but during the day with a ADA permit, you can park. You will be able to park in those ADA parking spaces.
Madam Mayor, I was just thinking the city is looking for some places to put electrical charging for the cars that need to have a charge. And, pardon me?
That'd be a nice location.
Yeah, maybe, and in the future, Trado might consider helping the city locate a charging station there. Just throwing it out.
That could be considered. The other note on the storm drain access is that the storm drain manhole access, which is currently in the middle of Trado's property, was constructed when that section of old storm drain that runs underneath that property collapsed, and they didn't have much option as to where that manhole was to be located. It is located in the middle of private property, and that there's no current easement to access that for the city from a maintenance point of view. And so the construction of a new manhole that will access that storm drain that runs underneath the parking lot and those buildings will be on public property and will have much better and more open access for maintenance in the future.
All right. Any other, let's see, did I do public comment? Yes. Any other public comment? Please come to the podium.
Well, I just have a question, because based on this conversation, it looks like this has been improperly agendized, because this is specifically for Green Street Beer LLC, and now you're saying it's 55 Properties LLC. So I have a point of order question.
Okay. Attorney White?
So Green Street Beer LLC is one of the companies that's involved. The agenda, which is, the staff report, which is more specific, in addition to the, it's a resolution.
Resolution's only for the PG&E.
Well, for the PG&E part.
Well, actually, we don't have a resolution.
Yeah, so just minute action. So I don't see a problem with it, but we could always, by minute action, clarify who we're talking about. All the entities are specifically linked and have different responsibilities within them. So the agendizing, while maybe it could have been a little bit better, is certainly not imperfect.
Okay.
So.
All right. And I see one more hand back there. Please come up to the podium.
I'm Barbara Dressler. On that point, the three different entities, are their liability and responsibilities linked as well? Do we know that? And then I'll bring another point. I understand that 27 of those parking spaces are to be either leased or rented or something to the brewery in perpetuity. Is that correct? What's the relationship there? What's happening with that?
Mr. Miller.
There are no current agreements for any of the entities to have a right to use those parking spaces as you have described.
Okay. Do they have parking organized yet? Has there been parking slated yet for that?
They have a condition of approval that prior to occupancy, they have to meet their parking requirements for the project, which can be on-site, off-site, or paid through a fee, in lieu fee.
Okay.
And so before we issue the occupancy permit, they'll have to demonstrate that they have the required parking.
Okay. And you don't think it'll be right next door to the building?
I'm not going to surmise tonight to say where any of it could be.
Okay. I guess my other question is, I have never heard of a development this large getting this far without parking or utilities organized in advance. And I understand that you make a distinction between design review and site review, but on a development this large, is that reasonable? What do you think?
I'm going to defer to the city administrator, but
it seems we've gotten pretty far along with some pretty big questions. B of A is going to provide trash location for them.
Well, that's totally up to them.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Would B of A want trash location? I don't know.
We don't know.
And so I guess my question is I don't know of other businesses in this town that have this sort of latitude in starting a project without having to pin down these issues prior to starting and getting permitted. Is that the case?
Madam Mayor and Council, the applicant went through the city's required review process, which, as the planning director described, was a design review. Based on the design review approval, they obtained their building permit and they're under construction. Issues that have been referred to would typically be addressed in a site plan review process, but that was not required of the applicant. So they have their design review approval and the conditions that were established by the Planning Commission to comply with. And they're meeting those requirements.
But we're providing an easement kind of after the fact without charging them anything. Now, I understand what you have to say about the parking lot, but it's no worse than the B of A parking lot. We use it every day, all of us in the community. I think that $100,000 should come to the city for the use of an easement, for the use of the easement of the parking lot. We've already said that we are looking at a $1 million deficit in our community budget, our general fund, as of the 2021 budget. It seems to me we need to start treating all of our developments as charging them for what they're costing the community. And an easement in perpetuity, it strikes me, is someplace that we could ask for those funds.
Well, in this case, the $110,000 project is being paid for by the entity that owns the.
I'm saying that I don't mean to
new
interrupt.
Business.
Right.
So whether or not the $110,000 comes to the city, or it's paid for out of the funds by the developer, the city will end up with a newly created parking lot.
Well, I'm saying that the parking lot probably doesn't need that level of development. We do need a handicap access, that's absolutely true, but that would be required of any developer using that parking lot. We don't know yet that they will be, but I think it's a pretty good chance. So if we come down the road and they are asking the city for the use of that parking lot, we need to reconsider as to whether or not they would need to do it anyway, and that the city should be paid for the use of the parking lot as opposed and the easement, as opposed to just giving it to them as we're doing today.
As
I understand you don't want to continue on this. I just want this in the record that I think we're going to come down the road. We have come down the road without seeing by a site review what obviously in a large project we already knew that there had to be a setback for utilities. That was in their original statement. So I'm just saying that we are going to come down the way where they're probably going to need parking. We will have provided them an easement for nothing, and I don't think that parking lot requires the level. I think that if they do it, it's for their benefit, and that the city should be paid for the use of the easement. Anyway, we can let it stop there. It sounds like we're going in circles, but I don't think the city, as we have talked about, needs to be looking for revenue. I don't think that we've looked at this as a possibility as closely as we can. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Just have one other comment.
No.
Hi, my name is Larry Coombs. I've walked that parking lot. It was in pretty good shape before. How many permits? There were 29 spaces there originally, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And are those all permitted from 8 to 5? No. There was public parking was part of it?
There's the entire lot is a permitted lot, but not all of the spaces are permitted because they're not paid for. But it's still a permitted lot during the day.
So with the parking, everybody seems to think there's not enough parking in Sonora. Those permits weren't all sold.
That's correct.
But they could have been by the city, and that would have been revenue to the city.
That's correct.
And then it would not be allowed for public parking. And as the city grows, it's going to be more crowded. We're not developing that much more parking. So those permits could end up being very valuable. And all 29 of them have good-sized spaces where they are, and we're looking at a potential loss of revenue to the city of Sonora. And if That's the point that I'm making is does the 27 spaces that it's going to be, does that include 2 handicapped?
Yes.
Okay, so it's down to 25 permitted. It was 29, and then it'll be 25. So that's a total loss to the potential revenue of the city. Do you know what the cost per permit is? Is that an annual permit?
They're done on a monthly basis, and I think they're $20 or $24 a month per space.
$22.50 a month?
$22.50.
Okay, so when you add that up over the years, that could be a tremendous amount of revenue for the city of Sonora. So it's a serious decision because the fact that they weren't all subscribed for is really not looking into the future. I guarantee you they will all be subscribed for. And if one individual or one business buys them all, that's not going to help downtown parking at all during the middle of the day, and it won't help any of the workers that can't find space to park. It's kind of, there's a potential that could happen, is there not? I'm just asking the question. Thank you.
There's potential.
The annual rate is $270 per space per year. There are, I think, 14 that are currently permitted, and the balance are not. And the council has entertained the idea to consider converting those to all public parking and not have any of them permitted in the future. So that's an assignment that we have to bring back to the council, but for all of our parking lots. So if there's a concern about availability of space, that may be something the council wants to consider in the future.
And also remember that after 5 o'clock, it's a public parking lot. Anyone can park there. Okay, any other public comment? We can only allow you to come up one time during public comment, so.
I have a procedural question, not really a comment.
If it's a procedural question, I'd let him come up. If it's a
Okay,
procedural,
then
but it needs to be a procedural
question, come up to the microphone, please.
The letter that I put into the record, the letter that I put into the record, does that need to be read into the record in case I need to question your decision later?
No, it becomes part of the record.
Okay,
So it'd be part of the complete record for this item.
Thank you very much.
I'll let you close public comment, then I'll make mine.
Okay. Any other public comment? Then I'll bring it back to the council.
So what I would ask, just to eliminate any confusion as it relates to who's doing construction and who's holding and who using, as it relates to the condition to approve the use of the Caulfield parking, is I would add 55 Properties LLC in addition to Green Street Beer LLC as part of any recommended motion from staff.
Madam Mayor, that was going to be my question. I was going to make a motion, but I wasn't sure how to make it with that possibility of not being correct.
So in the recommendation in the staff report, there's two separate actions. One is to authorize the grant of easement that the mayor can sign, and that is for PG&E's benefit. That is not for the benefit of the property, the adjacent property owner. And the second is to authorize me to sign on behalf of the city an agreement prepared by the city attorney, and you can add between the city and Green Street Beer LLC and or 55 Properties LLC.
Okay.
Okay, so first we want to approve the easement with PG&E, so moved.
Okay. I need a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to throw out there real quick, we've got a private entity coming downtown. They want to improve upon something. It's all done with permits. Everything is done legally. I have no doubt in my mind that everything is going to be done the way it says it's going to be done. And we've got the plans right here in front of us, and I think this is great for downtown. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I mean, there's millions of dollars getting invested in our little downtown, and I don't think we can look a blind eye to it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry, did I hear a second?
Yes, Councilmember Garabin.
First part was just on the
Right.
PG&Es.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. We've already had public comment, so I'll bring it back to the council for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Looks like it's unanimous, Mary Jane. Okay, we move on to the city administrator executing an agreement as prepared by the city attorney to allow the installation of the grease interceptor, bike rack, and sewer and water, electrical, and propane service lines laterals as needed, correct?
Between the city and Green Street Beer LLC and 55 Properties LLC.
I'll move approval on that. And I think what the folks have been forgetting to talk about is the additional revenue that will be coming to the city in regards to the opening of that business. And that's going to be a huge influx of income to the city through sales tax. So although we may lose some deficiencies in one area, we're going to more than make up for it with the additional business, and hopefully the additional business that'll be coming to downtown Sonora and shopping in our shops and restaurants downtown. So with that, I'm looking for approval.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
Any other comment or discussion?
I just want to talk with Doug again, our city attorney again, just to be clear that, I mean, it's pretty clear that the folks that were just here are making sure all the records are being perfectly kept and all. I just wanted to be sure that if we go ahead and pass this now as agendized now, considering the question that Mrs. Dowd had, whether we're okay with that, or we should properly agendize both corporations before we take an action to protect ourselves.
So let's go over real quickly why it's okay. So even if it was a typo, we had a typo to put the incorrect name. Everything has been properly made public through the staff report process, as well as the substance of what we're doing. All we're doing here is we're adding on an additional group that's involved, has been discussed on in the staff report. Nobody was jeopardized, wouldn't have the opportunity to speak on it because we didn't add 55 Properties LLC to the agenda, the actual agenda wording. And so because they wouldn't be jeopardized or wouldn't be precluded or wouldn't know that this is something important I need to show up, I have no concerns about the lawful nature of being able to move forward. In reality, the subject matter of what's being done here is what is actually important. The actual entities are just somewhat insubstantial. They're important. So they're all the same people, basically. But they're all the same groups. It's just different holdings, development, operating entities. They're all the same. So by just adding 55 properties, and we're discussing here and pointing it out and making the change. So I feel very, very comfortable from a legal standpoint. If I could, Councilmember, just make one other clarification so that everybody knows why we're doing it. The gentleman asked to have his letter read into the record. The council has the ability, he could ask and make copies and provide it to the council and they could read it. The council member could ask for it to be read into the record, but there's no requirement for us to read particularly. I mean, you can get a stack of 50 letters and you can be your own mind. It's really up to them, it's up to the individual council members if you feel like there's something in there that you need to hear. You can ask for it to be read in the record. There is a separate part of the read the record. So even with this and with his procedural request, I wanted you to know and feel comfortable, why you received the advice that you have and what it's based on.
Okay.
Clarification or a couple clarifications. You had suggested the word and/or 54 properties and/or greening, and then you didn't hear and/or. I just heard and in the motion.
Well, you can actually try to turn it into or.
Or, okay.
It can be either or. It doesn't have to be both.
Okay, and also is the council authorizing or approving the agreement itself, or just authorizing execution of the agreement? Or is that considered the same by authorizing execution of the agreement by the city engineer?
By the city.
Authorizing placement of.
The motion is to authorize me to execute an agreement that will be prepared by the city attorney.
Okay.
It's for the placement of the transformer research
okay.
bike ramp and utility services. So perhaps just for clarification purposes, in case there's any confusion, if the maker of the motion would mind confirming that what we just said represents the motion.
That was my intent.
Okay, and did we have a second on that motion? Yes. Councilmember Hawkins. Okay, any other discussion by the council? We've already had public comment, so I'll bring it back to, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Approval was unanimous, Mary Jane. Okay, item number 4 is presentation of City of Sonora 2020 General Plan 2017 Proposed Comprehensive Amendment. Staff report.
Thank you. Tonight, as you stated, this is just a presentation of the comprehensive 2017 amendment to the general plan. This is the city's 2020 general plan. As you guys are aware, the state of California requires that all cities and counties adopt a general plan. The city's current general plan was adopted in 2007. It contains all the mandatory 7 elements, and then they also included air quality, cultural resources, economics, community identity, and recreation within the general plan. All elements within a general plan have to be consistent with all of the city's other documents, such as your zoning ordinance and subdivision procedures. Again, it was adopted in 2007. At the time it was adopted, the zoning Title 17, which is the zoning ordinance for the city, was not brought into consistency with the general plan. And it was in that state when Tim came on board with the city, and as well as after Ed retired and I took over as community development director. We have used the document now 5 years since working with the general plan, and as the council is aware, we feel that the general plan is a little cumbersome for a city of 3 square miles, and we also felt that it needed to be brought back in conformance with the city's current zoning that we have in the city, instead of having to rezone multiple parcels throughout the city. And so we undertook an update, a comprehensive update of the general plan. That was done by Paula Danilek. She is the city's contract planner, as you guys are aware, and for the public's knowledge. And she's going to do a presentation to you guys tonight on the general changes that were made in the general plan. I see George brought his and Connie brought hers. This is, again, just for discussion and a presentation. We will be bringing this back to you for adoption at a later meeting. It was approved by the Planning Commission, and we held 2 public meetings prior to their adoption of or approval or recommended approval to the City Council. We held a public meeting January 9th and also February 13th to allow the public to have any questions or comments. So there has been a lot of public participation in the process. Also, there is some general plan land use designations that are proposed, and Paul will go over that. And any property that was affected by that, all of those property owners were also met with individually and discussed what they would like to propose for their properties. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paula. Again, we'll be bringing this back, and there is no action. At the time we bring it back, or in between, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop by my office. The general plan, the red line version of the general plan, has been on the website since January. It has been available for the public for a very long time, and you guys all received yours at the same time that the Planning Commission received theirs. So anyway, I'm going to give this mic over to Paula.
Thank you. All right. So most of the things that we were working with in the general plan, as Rochelle mentioned, was that first of all, it's a very large document, and we were trying to reduce it down to something that was more manageable, both in an implementation standpoint as well as just in what makes sense for a city of this size with the available land that's left and things like that. One of the main things that we found was there was tremendous amount of redundancy throughout your document. There would be implementation programs in one element that were then repeated in sometimes 2 or 3 different elements, and not only just repeated and cross-referenced, but given new numbers. So from an implementation standpoint, when the planning staff brings things to the council or the planning commission, one of the things we are charged with is saying that the project is consistent with your general plan. To really do that, if something's repeated that many times throughout the document, we needed to be saying that over and over and over. So your staff reports and things like that got really cumbersome. So the draft document that has been out on the website since January has shown those deletions where we didn't get rid of implementation programs other than 2, which I'll discuss at the end during the CEQA standpoint. But we did delete any that were duplicates and kept them only within the section that made the most sense for them to be included in the first place. Another thing that has happened since your general plan was originally adopted was the redevelopment laws were done away with at the state level, which you guys have dealt with this on many different issues. Your general plan had things that were referencing that old redevelopment law. So any place that was the case, we went through and made sure that we took out. We did some of this as part of the housing element update that we did earlier. And then this effort went through the rest of the chapters and elements that you have to get rid of those items as well. Some of the things since 2007 have been completed. You are actually implementing your general plan, which is a fantastic thing. So we also looked at things that were completed and took those out. If it's done and could be removed and wasn't a continuation item or something like that, we took those out. And then just the organization of the general plan itself. There were some things that were noted in certain elements that didn't really need to be there and would be better organized. Transportation is one of those such items. It was listed repeatedly in the land use element, and you have a circulation element. So instead of having those policies in 2 different places, we put them into the circulation element where people would naturally go to look for that information, trying to make it user-friendly for the public at large as well, who isn't used to dealing with general plans. And then Rochelle did mention this. We really worked hard to align the general plan and the current zoning that you have with your Chapter 17 to better match up and not to create additional districts that weren't really necessary to accomplish the goals that were stated in the general plan. One of the problems that has arisen without the changes in the general or in the zoning ordinances and without creating all these additional districts that were in the general plan, you had properties that would be literally non-conforming even when you applied a new zoning district to them. And we'll go through some of those details when we talk about the land use element here in a minute. So by doing the alignment with the zoning and creating a better flow with the zoning districts that you currently have, it reduced the amount of times that a single property owner, particularly in the single family district scenarios, would have their zoning changed and then not be able basically to finance their properties and things like that because they'd be created into a non-conforming situation, and the financing industry doesn't really like that when it happens. So we'll go through some of that in more detail as well. At your places, there were maps that may help you. These aren't really great on a parcel by parcel level, but I wanted to be able to do a side by side for you and kind of point out the big items of where we're changing things. On the, let me see if I get this right. On the right side, on this side, is your existing general plan, and this is the draft map. So Some of the changes that we have, you'll notice up here, there was an annexation that occurred, so we've brought in the boundaries there. Also, the Dragoon Gulch area was annexed since your general plan, so we just basically expanded the boundaries of the mapping to reflect what you did. One of the biggest changes was dealing with this light blue color, and we'll go through the full details of it in the land use discussion, but just to kind of give you a synopsis, that light blue was a special planning area designation. And the idea was that it allowed for those properties to be kind of a mixed use or something where there were the larger tracts of property in town that could be developed to allow for the developers and the property owners to have some say in what was done. But until you engage in that development process, you don't really know exactly what you want to do yet.
Are these maps on our website?
Yeah. They are as well. So we did do numerous stakeholder meetings, and we've communicated with those property owners in developing a plan that will work for them. And one of the changes that came out of that is this property here is part of the Seventh-day Adventist kind of campus area, and so we included it into that mixed use designation for them. Also down in this area, it's already been developed. It's built out as single family, and so instead of having a special planning designation still applied to it, we went ahead and put the actual use that is there today over it. The other thing that you'll notice is kind of a large change is along your boundaries. This portion was picking up right of way. So whenever we did our calculations based on GIS and taking, the different designations and stuff, you're picking up a lot of property that you really don't have any land use that's going to go there. It's right of way. It's for roads. It's Caltrans right of way or various things. So we made sure to align the parcels better, so that when we go to do our calculations in the future on your land use designations, that would all come out correctly. We also have a change in this area that was done previous ordinance with the rezone when it was brought into this city. And as you can see on the existing map, that wasn't there. The other item that was changed was this is the dome area, and that was one of those special planning things. And we just included it into what it actually is, which is part of a historic mixed-use district. And then that also flows better with the designation. Instead of being a standalone item, it actually ties into what's in that area. It is part of your historic downtown area. So on a mapping standpoint, that's kind of the quick and dirty of what happened, but I wanted to bring those to your attention on all those items. And then we'll get into the proposed land use items. Like I said at the beginning, the list of things of what we were trying to accomplish throughout it, the document is redlined throughout all the elements to address those items that I talked about at the beginning. Your land use element is where we kind of got into some of the more detailed items of property development and property standards. So I wanted to make sure I went through this one in detail with you. And as Rochelle said, anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate either to ask them here or come by the office at any time. One of the biggest things that we saw was right now your general plan requires a specific plan. Specific plans are actually regulated by state law in particular. You don't typically see them on small developments. If you do, it's something similar to what you have in town, which was around the Walmart area. But other than that, it's usually pretty large-scale development, and there are certain requirements by law that you have to do for those. So instead of requiring them on anything larger than 10 acres, I'm sorry, as small as 10 acres, we took that requirement off. If someone's doing a development, they can still do a development plan. There's still other options of coordinating that development effort without requiring additional cost. And some of the specific plans, a cheap one is like $70,000. So it's one of those things that we felt wasn't necessary to achieve good development. The change from the special planning area, that was that blue area, to planned development and using the designation as a mixed use. This is one of those things that it was just a new name, and it was confusing with your zoning. Your zoning has planned development districts already in it, and that's kind of the vernacular that your community is used to using. And so adding the special planning area and a whole bunch of different language within that was really unnecessary, and we thought confusing to the process for people. So it was another way of trying to make it easier to implement and understand for the community at large, as well as developers that might want to be developing. The next one was allowing the development of the multi-use projects, and it all kind of folds in together. So the planned development zoning district exists, so you're not having to create another district or a combining district or anything special. You already have this on your books, and they can use that entitlement process and that vehicle for a mixed-use type of project. And then we changed that language from special planning to mixed use to make it all flow together. And basically what it allows is those large blue parcels that you saw, or chunks of area that had maybe multiple parcels on it, it allows the property owners and any developer that may want to come in, and if not the current property owner, to be able to have flexibility in what they're going to do on their site. They can take into account the environmental constraints, the other items that actually affect their property. If they want to do residential, they still have those options. If they want to do commercial, they have those options. And it really is going to come down to what is the planned development for that parcel. And we'll go through that as part of a development agreement type of scenario when they come in. And then the other one, and this probably affects most of the property owners in town more so than the larger lot ones. There were some minimum lot sizes that were added to your general plan that your current zoning does not follow. And so this is where the non-conforming situation was occurring. If we had rezoned the lots in town that had those minimum requirements, they would have become non-conforming in all three of your districts for residential, single family, medium, and high density. So what we've done is we've removed the minimum lot size, but we've kept your densities the same that they were. So you would still have a density of 1 unit per 6,000 square feet in your single-family residential district, and that's what it is today. So it's not going to create any non-conforming situations when that update is applied. Your medium-density residential, we also went with the 10.89 units per gross acre. You had a different density requirement for what was an acre and what was larger than an acre. But the reality is, when we looked at all of your requirements that you had with things like your hillside ordinance and the developments that you'd had proposed within the last, I think I went back 10 years to look at all of them, existing tentative maps and things like that. Nothing was actually being developed to that density anyway, and so it was really redundant to have the two different types. So we went with what was more in line with your current zoning to, again, avoid any non-conforming situations. And you'll still have the development controls to make sure that your hillsides are being protected and things like that, because those ordinances will still be in place. And then high-density residential, it was similar. So we kept it at the 21.75 units per gross acre, but all the other requirements would have to be met. So it's difficult to get to that high of a level of density, but it is an allowed density through that. Yes.
Yeah, do you happen to know how these compare to other foothill towns? Density rates and minimum 6,000 per single family?
6,000 is pretty standard, not just with hillside or the foothills, but it's pretty standard as a single-family district. You can do, like your R2 zoning district is, allows it to go down to a smaller lot size. You can still have a single-family house on that, the smaller lot size of 5,000 square feet, for example. But that falls under the medium-density residential land use designation. So it allows for you still to have some creative ways of providing, for instance, some more affordable housing types and the mixture types. It wouldn't be just a single-family designation to get down to the lower lot sizes. You usually would typically do it in either a mix of a high-density residential mixed type of program or a medium-density residential. But the single-family residential is pretty standard at that rate. And then the last one, just to note, the heavy commercial didn't actually include as a listed use gas stations and auto repair facilities. So we moved that language around to make sure that that was included, because it is what's actually out on the ground in a couple places in your town. So we wanted to make sure that the city's ordinances, when they are all lined up, allowed for the right things in the right districts. And that's in a heavy commercial. It's not necessarily in just the C district of your zoning, but that works out through the difference between the ordinance and the land use designations. So those are the biggest changes in that chapter. Just a quick run through of those. I know the red line copies that are out there, there are a lot of things that we deleted and moved around and things like that. So I wanted to specifically draw your attention to these in case you hadn't had an opportunity to go through that. The last part, if nobody has any questions so far, is to go over this.
I do, Paula, I do have a question. To do with the minimum lot sizes. So there's a change in the updated general plan. How does that affect any developments that have already been approved under the old general plan?
So you didn't have any projects that were approved under the old general plan that would be affected by that lot size change, because part of what happened was the general plan had a minimum lot size in it, but it also had a density. The density is the same. We didn't change the density. It was just that size of the lot. We ran into a few situations when we were implementing some zone change requests in the last couple years that brought this to our attention, where you had a single-family house on a small lot that didn't meet the minimum requirement. And so instead of being able to rezone it to R1, and it was a single-family lot, that we had to either do a multifamily zoning district or an R2 district in order to make it compliant with the general plan. So this would remove that type of a scenario from happening in the future. Most of your lots in town, particularly in the established town, are small. So having the 7,500 square foot lot, which was the minimum in the existing general plan right now, there's a lot that won't meet that if you leave that in place. So that's why we're suggesting you remove it.
Two other questions. You mentioned that the dome in the updated plan will be historic mixed use. And what was it previously?
Special planning.
Special planning.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's for the complete 7.5 acres of that whole property, correct?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. It was special, what was it?
Special planning area.
Special planning area.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last question is to do with the land use element, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how the specific plan is regulated by state law. So if I have less than 10 acres, as an example, the 7.5 acres at the dome, you said typically a specific plan is not
It's not typically on a small, so can I just do like a primer on it?
Yeah.
Would that be helpful? Okay. So state law actually has regulations about specific plans. They're very detailed of what you have to do. And it's basically a mini general plan for a certain area that you're going to do. You typically see them when you have large developments that are coming in that are going to have mixed uses, and you have 1,500 acres type of thing, and they're going to be doing large-scale infrastructure improvements. They're going to have a commercial area. They're going to have multiple residential types in it. They're going to have schools. They're going to have parks, and they set up the financing through that. They set up the major infrastructure, the water lines and the sewer lines that are going to be the trunk lines and things like that. And so all of that is done, and it's regulated in state law. State law is very specific of what you have to do to go through that. Your general plan right now has a requirement for that for anything of 10 acres. Or
anything over 10 acres.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And while I've seen specific plans on smaller properties, they're typically, it's more of what like you have in town right now, where it was part of the Walmart type of scenario, where it's something like that. The large lots that you have left to develop, none of them really get to that threshold where the expense of going through a specific plan is really going to be valuable. We think that through the planning process that you have in place with your subdivision regulations, your hillside ordinance, and some of those other requirements, you would still be able to get a well thought out, planned scenario for those type of areas without the added expense and the added regulation of going through the specific plan that is detailed in state law.
So in the existing general plan, did we have the requirement that
Yeah.
did have the
You have the requirement right now in your specific plan, if a project's over 10 acres, that could trigger a specific plan for it.
Okay.
So we are suggesting to remove that.
Okay. Got it.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Any other questions by the council for planning?
Okay. The next portion that I want to kind of talk through in this workshop type of format with you tonight is the CEQA side of this. So as you know, any project in California has to be analyzed for CEQA, the Environmental Quality Act, to go through things. And you've had on your agendas before mitigated negative declarations and things like that. When we looked at the changes that are being proposed in the general plan, we've analyzed it, and we believe that an exemption will be the proper tool for the CEQA compliance. And I'm going to kind of walk through this tonight because there's the lot sizes and things like that we talked about are things that we considered. So it's basically an exemption. Primarily what we have is editorial changes. A lot of the deletions in the document and things like that, we're taking them out of one section, but they still are present in other sections. There were 2 implementation programs that were suggested for deletion. And these were mitigation measures in the previous general plan's EIR. They will not affect the CEQA exemption, and the reason is the first one, which is Program 6EA, was completed, and so it's no longer needed as a mitigation measure. You've already done that. And then the second one was Program 1CD, and this was an implementation program that was written as a means of bringing consistency between 3 different elements. You don't need to have that implementation measure because the zoning district that it was suggesting to be created duplicated regulations you already had in place that would take care of that. So even with the removal of that mitigation measure, it would not trigger a further analysis of that because the intent that was being mitigated is already handled under your existing regulations. And then finally, the biggest thing that we really worked through to make sure we had covered from an environmental quality standpoint was with all these talks of density changes and removing lot sizes and things like that, we wanted to make sure that the amount of growth that could occur under your current general plan and what is proposed in the update would not trigger any additional analysis being needed from traffic or air quality or those various areas that we look at through CEQA. And because since 2007, when the document was adopted, you've had 24 single-family residential units built, permitted. That's it, from then till now. So you haven't had a tremendous amount of growth. The regulations that were in place had density assumptions within them. We took the actual acreages that still are the same ones to be developed. With the 24 lots, you didn't really have a big change in your acreage counts from that. And when we did all the analysis, and I'm just going to give you the synopsis here, the current general plan's assumptions were 1,171 parcels that could be developed. And with the tentative maps that you have on the record for those parcels and the removal of the minimum lot sizes and anticipation of things like your hillside preservation ordinance and things like that, the anticipated number of units is 578. So even though you had those higher amounts that were assumed in the general plan, when you actually started to apply the regulations on a project-by-project basis, particularly with your tentative maps, your density just never was realized at those higher densities. And so the lower amount is more realistic, and that would have already been covered under the previous EIR analysis. So the exemption is still going to be valid. So other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody had.
Okay, any questions or comments by the council?
I'm just surprised at that last statement you had up there, that only 24 homes have been built.
Yeah.
In a period of, what, 9 years?
Yeah, and granted the period starts with 2007, and as you know, the housing market completely tanked in 2008 and 9 and 10. I mean, the wheels fell off everywhere in California during those years. So, yeah, but.
So we're trying to encourage more building in the city limits and make it easier for that to happen.
A lot of the efforts that we're doing is to streamline those. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other comments or questions by the council? If not, then I will open it up for public comment.
Well, I just want to ask a question, because your general plan should represent what the public sees their community as becoming. And Rochelle made the comment that we had a lot of public participation. So I'd like to know how many people you saw, because when I was here at the meeting, it was just me.
Do you guys want me to address that? Because she can't talk to me, so if you guys want me to address it, I will.
Is it necessary to address it? The public comment was at the Planning Commission meetings, is that correct?
We provided the opportunity for the public to attend 3 meetings at the Planning Commission. If they choose to attend, that is their option. If there were concerns, I imagine more people would come. I will say that anybody affected by where you saw the specific plan requirements to looking at a different land use designation, she met with all of those property owners individually in stakeholder meetings. But we have the public meetings, we advertise the public notices, and the public has an opportunity to partake.
Okay. So if the council has any feedback after reading, this is just the redlined edition. These are the changes that have been made in the 2007 document, correct?
That's correct, sorry. Yeah, those are the proposed changes. The document that you see next will be the adoption of those changes into the general plan. And then the red line will go away, and that will become the updated general plan that we will use for the city.
And when would you like to have any response back from the council in your hands?
We'd like to bring it forward probably late at the second meeting in October, or at least the first meeting in November. So if you guys have any comments, please let me know. It's not an ordinance. It's adopted by resolution, so it's a one-meeting event. We don't have to bring it back twice. But if you could get those comments to me soon so we can address that and bring those back and make the public aware of any changes that you have or are requesting.
Right, and this red line document is on the city's website, so if anybody from the general public would like to look at it and make any comment, they can get that back to you as well.
And if it's a significant enough change, and Doug can correct me if I'm wrong, then we have to go back through the Planning Commission as well, because then they have to do it as a recommendation to you. So we'll see what you guys have. I know you've had lots of time to look at it, so I'm hoping that you guys have already kind of went through it and have any questions addressed tonight, but
Page by page.
thank you. We gave you lots of time on this one, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other public comment? Then I'll come back to the council. This is a no action item. This was for information only. So we will move on to item number 5, discussion and possible recommendation regarding the sale of up to $500,000 in PG&E Rule 20A underground funds. Staff report.
Sure. I'll start and have Jennifer fill in the details, but the council did authorize staff to solicit, entertain, or advertise the fact that the city had Rule 20A funds or credits that you would be considered selling. There was an initial outreach and didn't get any interest, but through those contacts, we were contacted by an agency that is interested in acquiring a portion of the Rule 20A funds that we have. And Jennifer can talk about that offer. If the council is willing to move forward, we would just need direction because the other agencies' council would also need to consider it, and that's scheduled in early part of October. But the one thing that it does do is create an opportunity for the city to obtain some one-time funds that could be available for capital improvement projects, and the one that comes to mind is the Stewart Street restroom project. So with that, I'll defer to Jennifer to talk a little bit about the terms that under which these would be sold, and still the opportunity the city has for future use of the remaining funds.
So Jennifer, before you start with the terms, would you very simply explain what PG&E Rule 20A underground funds are and why cities get this credit?
It's the 20A credits are an allocation based on essentially a percentage of our usage of electricity within the city. We earn just under $30,000 in allocations each year. You accumulate those up until the point that you do something with it. And that something is an undergrounding project. And if you notice on Washington Street, there's no overhead utility lines. Those were undergrounded back in the 80s, I think. So any of those overhead utility lines are placed underground with PG&E. They typically add in the cable and the other utilities while the trenches are open or the street's open, and they put it all in one.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as our city administrator mentioned, we had reached out. We didn't get any offers that we thought were in the realm of reasonableness. So kind of was sitting on it for a little bit until we got this call about 2 weeks ago now. We went back and forth with this agency on price, started at higher than the 50 cents on the dollar. That's what we ultimately agreed to bring forward to the councils. It is consistent with what the other agreements that have most recently occurred. It's anywhere from 46 cents on the dollar to 55 cents. So we're in the ballpark. I know it's probably not what the council wanted, but if we're looking at a one-time use of funds to complete the restroom project, this would be a source for that. It's up to $500,000. They are figuring out what their exact amount is that they need. I have a call in to their engineer this evening. We were playing phone tag a little bit, but I did speak to the Public Works Director of the agency today, and they are on track and will be presenting this to their council in early October. Should you approve it, then we would come back in the second meeting in October and bring forward an agreement between that agency and ourselves, and then also a resolution to pass on to PG&E to transfer whatever the allocation amount is to the other entity. So, if you have any questions?
Any questions by the council for staff? Any public comment? Then I'll bring it back to the council. I have one question. At our last meeting, there was some conversation about projects that the city has not completed, which included the Stewart Street bathrooms, and which was the most important one. But another one that came up was the Green Street ADA accessibility at Caulfield Park. Mr. Miller, we budgeted for that project in the fiscal year 17-18 budget.
That's correct.
Did we not?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's anticipated for spring construction.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that the council remembered that that project has been budgeted for. Councilmember Plummer.
There was another item, and I believe it's clear for myself, but I think the public deserves to know as well, that as to the disposition of selling, the city's disposition after selling the Rule 20A funds, that does not eliminate, or will not in the future eliminate, us receiving future funds or grants in that. And that I believe to be true. Could you explain, at least for the public and maybe the rest of the council?
That's correct, and I was a little bit neglectful in the second part of the staff report that we talk about if we sell $500,000 in credits. Our current allocation is a little over 1.2. That's how much we've saved up in the bank with PG&E, $1.2 million. So we would still have $700 and some thousand dollars, or up to that, left, and that would get us approximately 700 to 800 feet of a project that we could still do. And the reason it could be 800 feet is we will continue to accrue our $29,995 in allocations each year. It takes about 3 to 5 years to get in the queue for PG&E, so that's maybe $150,000-ish, depending on how long that queue process is going to take us. And then we will have an established project at that point. There's even potential you could borrow a little bit more when you start the project. But realistically, you're looking at $800,000 in that ballpark that we could still do a project. We will not stop accruing our allocations. We will continue to do that. You could hold off and build more up and do a bigger project if you wanted to, but you have an opportunity to get some one-time cash and do a project.
Well, we've waited 40 years. I suppose we could easily wait another decade or two and accrue a lot more money.
That's true.
And you'll wait 5 to 7 years to do a project. Well, it'll take that long in process to do a project.
And thank you, Ms. Calloway.
Other questions or comments by the council? I already did did public comment, so it's back to us.
Yeah. So basically, it's the possible promise of how long it takes to get full funding for an undergrounding of project down the road, or getting 50% on the dollar and get some money now that frees up that money to do something that we can do now.
Well, no, go ahead.
I mean, hopefully I said that right. If this had been the entire pot, then I would not be for it, but it leaves more than half of the amount still in the budget, or in the Rule 20A money. It's the basic the basic thing of bird in the hand with two in the bush. So that's kind of the dilemma we have, or it's a matter of, I guess, trying to decide whether somewhere down the road, whether we want to use the full amount of funding that we could possibly get for an undergrounding project versus doing something that we can do. So, in that respect, I think I'm going to go ahead and support this.
Okay. One of the things at the last council meeting that came out of when there was conversation about projects is we have projects that we haven't done anything with because we don't have the dollars to do it with. Therefore, I did request that the Finance Committee start looking to see if they can find dollars that could be used to at least complete the bathroom, since that was the #1 Vision Sonora project, I believe, by the community. So this would help with that. If in fact this goes through, this isn't doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It could fall through, but they need our recommendation in order to proceed with the entity that's interested in our credits.
And I want to congratulate staff on finding this money out there. I mean, we had, at least I didn't have any idea that this was even a possibility of cashing in our credits there with PG&E. And actually the money goes into our general fund, and we choose what to do with that money at that point in time. And of course everybody has talked about the restrooms, and that would be the most immediate, I guess, need that we could spend that money on. But again, I think staff did a great job on negotiating the amount of money that we're going to hopefully get, and finding that project in the first place. So, thank you.
Okay, so I've asked for public comments, so I've brought it back to the council for a motion.
I was going to make a comment real quick.
Okay.
Just say we need to invest in our downtown, and I look forward to this.
Okay.
Very small.
In that case, I'll move approval of regarding the sale of up to $500,000 of PG&E Rule 28 underground funds.
Second.
Any other comment? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
So we will bring an agreement back to you, and then at some point, once the sale is consummated and we have that cash in hand, then the council will need to decide how they might want to spend that money.
All right, well, we'll look forward to success and have the opportunity to have that conversation. Okay, item number 6 is consideration to adopt resolution number 09-18-2017-B, authorizing the chief of police, I think it's our acting chief of police, but to execute an agreement to allow the use of the city firing range by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE. Acting Chief Vanderwill.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, Honorable Council. This would allow the continued shared use of our firing range located here within the city by our local CAL FIRE sworn personnel. Back in 1995, when the range was constructed, CAL FIRE provided work crews and equipment to help clear the area as well as level it for the range and the parking area as well. In exchange, they were allowed to use the range for training and qualification. Since then, they've been allowed to continue to use the range in exchange for twice a year providing crews to clear for fire hazards, brush, debris, and whatnot. The resolution here would allow me to execute the agreement, which is attached. The agreement does include allowable activities by CAL FIRE, and it also includes an indemnity agreement.
Any questions or comments for Acting Chief Vanderwell by the council?
So do they have, there are certain times when they can do this under the police department's approval or whatever? They can't just go anytime and...
Correct. The process is they would abide by our range use hours, and they would schedule it in advance. They notify us, they're put on the calendar, and to avoid overlapping usages by us and them, but also so we know when they're going to be there.
And it's only for the 12 calibers unit?
Correct.
Okay. And about how often do they use it?
Yeah, the agreement would allow for once a month, but typically they use it a lot less than that. If I had to estimate, I'd say probably 6 times a year.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions or comments by the council for Acting Chief?
It's a great trade. It saves the city money, and if there are any homeowners in that area, it's being looked after not only by our police department, but by CAL FIRE. So to me, it's a win-win for everyone.
We continue to have a great working relationship with our CAL FIRE sworn personnel, local. They help us out with special events. They help staff road closures. They come out when we do special details, to include a recent one up on Truck and Miller. So this would help continue our relationship with them as well.
Anything else by the council? I have two things. In the Exhibit A, item G, it says brass will be retained by contractor. Should that be grass? Or
Brass.
Brass.
It should be
Tell
brass.
me what that means. Shells. Okay.
Expended shell casings.
All right. Don't always know what those words are. And then the other thing is, two other questions. The Sonora Police Department Range Master is yourself, our Acting Chief?
Currently myself, yes.
Okay. And is there a notification to the residents in the fairgrounds area and over on the other side, Simon's Hill, when there's going to be an active range taking place?
No, there's not there's not a notification in place. But with that calendar we maintain and dispatch, if someone calls in, here's gunfire, we can explain to them what's going on.
Okay. Would it be, I've had a couple of calls when there's been practicing taking place over there, and for a long period of time, and by residents. So I wanted to bring up that if there was any way that it could be, that they could be notified, it would be nice, and so that they're aware. Maybe they can leave town for the day or something if it tends to bother them. But if there's some way that that can happen, I don't know. I don't want to put added burden on the police department. But maybe there can be. Maybe you can think about some way that it could be out there that it's happening or something.
It seems like it would be challenging, but
no, except when the noise happens.
definitely something we can consider.
Okay, go right ahead.
Chief, the contract mentions night training. and I believe it was limited to once per year, if I recall correctly. But how does, okay, that I can see as being annoying to neighbors, etc. Do we actually do night training, or does CAL FIRE do night training?
We do it up until 8:30 p.m. So basically hours of darkness. So it's maybe not night through the night, but we would accomplish that training between dusk and 8:30.
Thank you.
I did think of another question. Are there any other entities besides our police department and CAL FIRE that uses the range?
Not anymore. CHP used to have a similar agreement. They no longer use it.
So the only one today that uses it is our department.
Is our department.
And the only one that would be allowed to use it in addition to our department would be CAL FIRE if the agreement's approved.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments by the council? Any public comment?
Well, it sounds to me like some of our troubles are over because it's only our police department, and that has not been the case in the past. It's been TNT and exploding targets out there at this little firing range. Now, there are neighbors. I want to be absolutely clear. You've been all over our property. So, and we are adjacent neighbors to the lot that holds this firing range. And we didn't move in there after the firing range was there. The house we live in was built in 1950. My wife has some comments she would like me to make, but she can't be here tonight. So the house was built in 1950, and it predates the firing range. And shooting occurs at various days and times. It's not incessant. However, on some Wednesdays it can be, and it has been clear till 8:30 at night. And they realize law enforcement needs to practice, but is not an appropriate location. We believe there is a fire hazard there, and we think the users are unaware of neighboring properties. And the if there are neighbors is explicit on that. There are neighbors. We aren't even the closest neighbors, and they are being affected. And plus, I do believe that the city police need an indoor facility, and I've mentioned this in the past. That's what's needed here, is a training facility that will be adequate to the needs of this city. And surely if there's funds for command vehicles and different things for law enforcement, then I believe that looking towards a more appropriate facility would be a very good track to take. The impact is significant. It truly is. When people are firing automatic rifles and the sound is, it's not, oh, I hear something. No, you know what you hear. It is, it's heavy munitions being fired, and they impact your windows. You cannot go outside without absolutely knowing that you're being invaded. And this is, it's not incessant, it's rare. But the rarity makes it quite noticeable, even more noticeable. It's not like you living next to the train tracks and you can accustom yourself to the noise of the train. No. And the police force does, it has been the highway patrol in the past, and it's been other agencies as well. But it sounds like it's going to be far fewer. Is that correct? How many people are shooting now at this range?
Would you like me to address
Let's
that?
finish public comment. And
Okay.
Then
Well, it's
council.
been a lot of people in the past, and there have been training courses out there for the public in general. This firing range has been used for a lot of uses that weren't just restricted to the members of the Sonora Police Force and other authorized vehicles. We say it's only CAL FIRE in Tuolumne County. Does that mean strictly CAL FIRE employees that are located in Tuolumne and Calaveras County? Does it mean that they can cite their rifles? Is it just restricted to that one day a month maybe? If that's the case, then maybe the additional impact of this won't be so great. However, I certainly want to reinforce the concept that there are neighbors that are being heavily impacted by this firing range. You would never, ever allow this to happen in your neighborhood, and it never should have been allowed to happen in our neighborhood. There are other families, they're not here because nobody's ever been notified about this. Nobody knows that there's a discussion that may impact them that are neighbors of the firing range. We're never notified about anything. We have called the police when there's been a lot of fire going on late into the night, on Sundays, those kind of things, and have always left our name, and we're still not notified about any special activities. So notification would help a lot. But also, if you think there's nobody else impacted, you would be wrong. I know if we hear it, a lot of other neighbors hear it as well. So I'm sure you'll approve this because it's the good thing to do. But it's not good for me, and it's not good for some of your constituents because we are impacted by this firing range. Ed Wiley assures us that this has been kicked down the road for years. It has been agendized. We got to do something about this firing range. It's an inappropriate use in a neighborhood area. It's really not what the police should be doing. And they need a good facility. Let's find a way to get them that. Why don't we take that task on? Maybe the $230,000 seed money would be great. Let's try to find a new training facility for the police. I think they would welcome this much more than the what they have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Acting Chief Vanderwill, the question was asked about how much usage there will be between the Tuolumne County CAL FIRE. Wait a minute. It's the, somebody said Tuolumne County, but it says city firing range by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, so that would be all of CAL FIRE.
It would be the local unit. They have approximately 9 sworn personnel who would need to qualify. At any given time, they generally qualify about 4 or 5 at a time. The Sonora Police Department, we would qualify between 8 personnel and 12 personnel. Lately, it's been less. The agreement with the Highway Patrol has been several years since that's been in effect, so they haven't used the range for several years. So it's really not that many people, not that many shooters.
And this is a continuation of a program that's been ongoing. It's not, doing this with CAL FIRE is not this is not a new program, this is a continuation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, let's be clear, they have not been using it the past few years. They did originally. So they haven't, I think their agreement expired about the time I started here. It's a reinstatement of a prior agreement. And like the commenter, I was concerned about the frequency and the number of people, but the fact that it's one day and it's a limited number of representatives from CAL FIRE, while it creates some additional activity, it's not a significant increase over its current use. So, because we share the concerns of the noise in the area and the safety and any hazards that might be created, and there are no fully automatic weapons being used on the range.
Or explosives.
Or explosives. Or exploding targets, or what might have occurred in the past since I've been here.
I would suspect that the police are also not using heavy munitions, like 50 caliber, for example.
Absolutely not, no.
That was pretty much all my questions. If there was like tanninite used or something like that, I'm going, oh dear Lord. So, I've been out there, obviously. Mark, I know you've been. I don't know about the rest of the council members. I can see the frustration, and I would eventually love to see for our police department to have something indoor and then outdoor too, but I've shared that with you also. We're a small city, and with small cities come small budgets. It's a great range. I know that CAL FIRE has done a lot, to help, especially with the fire danger. I'm not even shooting right now because of the fire danger where I was shooting in Columbia because of the fire danger. So I know they've taken care of that really well. City crews have been out there taking care of it really well. I know that after going out there and seeing what goes on, the amount of training that goes into our Sonora Police Department when it comes to the use of firearms is above and beyond, I think, what most agencies in the state would use, at least in my opinion and what I know of law enforcement across the state. So it's a little range. We're, again, a small city, but for what it is, we have something that is really good. And I know that, gosh, what, a month or two back, there was a issue at Lowe's, and because of the training that goes on at that particular range, a gentleman who was under the influence of something didn't lose his life, so I see this as a very good thing. So I could go on and on. I've been out there. To me, it's a no-brainer.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments by the council? I do have a question. This is a 3-year agreement, and based upon what Mr. Miller said is that CAL FIRE has not been using the range and has not been doing the
I didn't say they weren't doing it,
Okay.
doing cleanup. They have been out there doing cleanup, even in the absence of an agreement.
Okay.
They helped remove a number of dead trees out there.
Okay. I just want to be clear that we all understand what they have done, even though they haven't been using the range for range practice.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And it is a 3-year agreement. Okay, well, I've asked for public comment, so it's back at the council for a motion.
I'd like to move we approve to adopt resolution number 9/18/27B, authorizing the chief to execute an agreement to allow the use of the city firing range by the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection.
Second.
Any other discussion or comments? I really hope that, and I suspect that you will, based upon the comment from the resident that's close by, that if there's any way that you can find a way to at least let him know and other residents know when firing is going to take place would be, I think, a consideration that could be taken in, that could be evaluated by the department and taken into consideration, based on the fact that we don't have our own firing range yet. So, indoor firing range. That's in the wish list for the future. Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the question. No, it was Councilmember Plummer seconded it. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
And the public, if you have issues, please come forward in the future. Okay, item number 7 is consideration to establish 2 no parking zones to allow transit stops on the north and south sides of Stockton Road near Green Street for the Unruly Brew and Q Festival on September the 30th. Staff report.
As you indicated, there's a festival on the 30th at the Middle of Fairgrounds. The TC Tuolumne County Transit Authority is providing transit service for that event. They have asked to have 2 transit stops established on Stockton Road for trolleys heading east and west in the vicinity as described, Stockton Road and Green Street. In order to sign those, the council needs to take action to designate them as no parking areas, and we'll sign them as a transit stop. And the transit authority will be responsible for posting it for no parking, if you approve their request.
Questions or comments by the council for staff? I have a couple. Is this a street closure request?
No.
Or a temporary transit stop request?
And you need to establish a no parking area in order to accommodate the transit stop.
Okay.
Otherwise, we don't have enforcement authority to tow vehicles if they're parked there.
Okay. And the number of parking spaces needed on the north side of Green, on the north side?
I don't know. I mean, it's the length of a trolley bus, so 2 or 3 spaces.
Okay, well, I think it mentioned something about Cazadora in here.
It's in front of
the restaurant.
Yeah, in front of that restaurant.
In front of that restaurant.
So it's between the 2 driveways there.
So it would take away parking in front of that restaurant on that day.
On that day between those hours.
And then on the south side, which the buses will be pulling into the Trado lot, or will they stop on the street?
On the street.
Was there any consideration regarding this request about doing pickup and delivery in the B of A parking lot instead of on Stockton Road?
You can
Because
ask.
that can,
You can ask
question
Tyler.
can go to the Tuolumne County Transit Authority person.
Hello, thank you. Tyler Somerset with the Transit Agency. We did consider turning in on South Green Street there. The trolleys don't have a great turning radius, so anytime you turn onto a narrow street like Green, then that forces us to, head straight in that direction and then try to get back onto Washington Street, which is difficult on, well, I guess that's, is that West? Thank you. And so we tried to avoid that entirely, just stay on the main drag of Stockton Road if possible.
So did anybody, since there is a restaurant business right there on Stockton, did anybody talk to the restaurant owner to determine if that would be any kind of if he had any issues with a transit stop there from 11 in the morning till, what, midnight or something?
We did not reach out to the restaurant owner there. They've got, an on-site parking lot, and they've got, parking along Stockton that won't be impacted, and then the parking that's associated with the Save Mart supermarket there. We'd be certainly happy to reach out and speak with that restaurant owner.
Is that the best place for the trolley to stop? I would think that
It would disrupt as few spaces as possible along there because you've got a driveway on both ends of that area in front of the restaurant. There's about 2 spaces in front of that business. But it gives the trolley maneuvering room in and maneuvering room out without eliminating other spaces.
because of the driveways.
Because of the driveways.
Okay.
And we currently operate a route in that area and serve that general location between Green and Save Mart, so we know we can make that movement without much issue there.
Oh, wouldn't you be able to move that more down towards Washington Street instead of in front of the business? I mean, there's a lot of area along there. In fact, even across from the Trado office, there would be possibilities there. You wouldn't be interfering with the business.
So the request on the south side would be in front of the Trado area. On the north side, anywhere the council felt good about giving us 2 or 3 spaces, I think we can serve. The one consideration is as you turn from Washington onto Stockton, the bus would have plenty of time to indicate that it's going to pull off to the side of the road, you know, just beyond Green. But we could certainly serve that area between. But you've got, you know, additional businesses that could be impacted there along that stretch as well.
And more parking spaces that would possibly be taken up in that area?
For the ingress and egress movement, yes.
It would be the same amount of parking spaces necessary for if you moved it further on down the street.
Well, if you moved it to the, you moved it west of the driveway that's on the west side of the restaurant.
No, east of the driveway.
Back towards Washington.
Right.
I wouldn't move it that direction. Move it back down towards the Save Mart frontage.
That's coming down Washington Street in that corner.
Yeah, you.
Or in front of the barber shop.
You don't want them to make the turn and then pull right over into a transit stop, but.
Well, I'm concerned that we're interfering with their business and we haven't even asked them about.
Well, then we'll just move it the other side of the driveway, south of the, or not south, west of the westerly driveway, and occupy 3 spaces there then for.
Which would be down in front of where the car lot is and the gold jewelry store place.
So what's the?
Yeah.
The 2-story small building.
That would work fine for us.
That would work.
Well, if you talk to the restaurant and they say no problem, you know,
Yeah.
go for it.
They may believe that they'd have more business with people
Getting right out.
Getting off and on.
waiting right in front of their door.
Doubt that very much. Hey.
Any other comments by the council? My concern is the restaurant owner, so.
So if they object, we'll move it further
object,
west.
then we'll move it further west. Okay. All right, any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for a motion.
In this instance,
Okay, I'll do it. So I move for consideration to establish 2 no parking zones to allow transit stops on the north and south sides of Stockton Road near Green Street for the Unruly Brew and Q Festival on September 30th.
And do we need to have in that motion anything about,
It sounds like you authorized in front of, I'm going to mess up the restaurant's name,
Cazadori.
Quesadori. And if they object, then it would be moved further west. So
Yeah, so part of that motion is, yeah, if the restaurant owners object, then we move it one side or the other.
okay. All right, any other comment or discussion by the council? Then I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
And, excuse me, Madam Mayor, who was the second on the vote?
Oh. Sorry.
Let's read.
Councilmember Hawkins made the motion and Councilmember Plummer seconded it.
And then let's call for the vote again.
And I'll, any other discussion by the council? Then I'll call for the vote again. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Included in our packets were monthly reports from the Community Development Department, Fire Department, Police Department, and Public Works Department. Any comment or questions by the council? Any public comment? Then I'll move on to the Vision Sonora Committee report. There is no report this month as the September the 14th meeting was canceled because there were no action items. There will be an action item for the next meeting, and I want to let everyone know that that meeting will take place on the first Thursday of October. That's October the 5th at 9 a.m. We have no communications this evening, so we will move on to council member and department head reports. Chief New, anything more from the fire department?
Yes, but I have to bring acting chief up with me.
Oh, you have to bring acting chief up with you.
Because we got buddies tonight.
Oh, all right.
We'll get it right in between us. What's that?
Oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, you like that? So we wanted to throw out a challenge to the council and the public. On September 26th, next week, at the Red Cross on Sanguinetti Road, we're going to be doing a Battle of the Badges for a blood drive donation. So you can go and donate blood at the Red Cross on Tuesday, Friday, or Saturday. They're open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And you can choose either the police department or the fire department to donate on behalf of, because we're having a nice little friendly challenge competition between departments. So we'd like to throw that out to the public. And
yeah, so the Red Cross, they've contacted us. They have been short on supplies lately. There's a nationwide demand for more donations, and so they hit us up, and we agreed. It's for a great cause. We understand, obviously, as first responders, the need for blood supplies is just truly a life-saving thing to do. So we're hoping everyone gets involved and come donate on behalf of the police department. And they'll take your name, tally it up, and we'll see who gets more donations by the end of the competition.
So do you know what the hours are on Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday?
all from 9 to 4.
9 to 4. And do you have to make an appointment?
You don't have to, but they recommend, and we will be doing a press release as well with that information. It's called a Rapid Pass. Is that correct?
Right. So on Tuesday, on the 26th, no appointments are needed, but they're encouraged. For the other times, for the other days of the week, they are required.
Okay, so make it real simple. Make an appointment, and then that way you'll get in. And also, a lot of people don't realize that even though you go to try to give blood, if you can't give blood, you still get credit for it. So yeah, if you can't, because the American Red Cross doesn't allow that anymore?
I think we can be movie tickets long.
Oh, I didn't ask for it.
No. I did 5 gallons. I feel a little disappointed with the number system.
You can still get credit for donating on behalf of the police department, though.
Or the fire department. We are, the challenge is from September 26th, and we're running it through October 3rd, so it's not just one day, but the donor location on Sanguinetti is only open Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 9 to 4, so you'll have that first week and then a couple of days the following week into October. So.
Okay, what I meant by credit is that if you need blood, that if you go and try to give blood, but for whatever reason, let's say your iron level is low, you still get credit for that. No.
So we have some flyers. They're not in color, but we wanted to hand those out to you tonight, and then we have some extra for the public if anyone would like some.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything? Okay.
Did you have anything else for the department?
Well, you never know when you might need it.
Nothing
Okay.
else. Thank you.
Okay, wait a minute, Acting Chief Vanderwill. Do you have anything else from the police department, since I called on the fire department and we had a double team here?
Nothing else. Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody got one? Yeah.
All right. Ms. Kellogg, anything from your department?
I think we've spoken up tonight.
Ms. Callaway, anything from your department? Mr. White?
Just that we'll have an update from Josiah Young, our lobbyist, in about 2 months on the bills that just went through. We got to see what the governor signed. He'll come back.
Which bill is that?
Oh, just all the bills that were passed that will affect local jurisdictions.
Oh, I got you.
So he'll be here in about 2 months after we know what the governor's going to do and signing some.
Okay. Mr. Miller, anything else?
I just mentioned work's progressing on the Mono Greenlee intersection project. They've encountered some additional rocks that they didn't have to blast them, but they had to break them up to get them out of there. We've encountered a little bit of groundwater in the immediate area, so they're remediating that. This coming early morning, they'll be extending the PG&E services from its former location to the new right-of-way line. And there'll be some on-site work for extending those utilities. And then they'll start forming up some of the concrete work, starting with the retaining wall that's at the back end of the property. So it's moving on. It's on schedule and on track at this point.
So based on the comment that we had this evening about the traffic, I don't know who's in charge of traffic, but
Well, the contractor's managing traffic through the work construction zone with the proper notices and lane closures. And there have been times when they've asked the police department to come out and monitor the traffic in the area because people are speeding through the construction zone and getting rather impatient. But there are times when the traffic does back up from the intersection up through the area described, and that's just a complication of the volume of traffic and the fact that 3 lanes are sometimes 2 lanes or sometimes 1 lane. But they'll be working when they'll be working in the right-of-way on a regular basis. They do that work at night. When they're working in and around the right-of-way, they do that work during the day. So, but that's just something people have to be patient with as we finish up the project.
and
It'll run through the end of October.
so if you don't want to get into the backup traffic on Mono,
You can come around on Sanguinetti and go to Greenlee.
to alleviate that right-hand turn onto
Right,
Greenlee.
and come down to Greenlee and then just head north on Greenlee.
Okay. City Clerk Casanetto, anything from you tonight?
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Councilmember Hawkins.
I have nothing tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Plummer. Councilmember
Not so
Garaventa.
I just want to report on some of the things I've done over the past couple of weeks. 10-second Saturday art night. Let's see what the Planning Commission meeting last Monday. We had a Personnel Committee meeting where we talked about negotiations there. The Sierra Conservation Center Public Affairs Committee, I think it's called, was this past Wednesday, and they had a presentation from prison industries about some of the stuff that the inmates make. And one of the takeaways I got from that was fairly interesting, is that you would think that most of the inmates that are involved in that program would use it as when they're on the process of coming out, as used as job training. But actually, they actually have more lifers than they do people that are training for jobs as they come out. So it's a mixture. I was surprised at that. Let's see. Parking and Traffic Commission that afternoon, we had 2 items. One was the discussion of the turn signal and right turn at Restano going up onto Motorway, which will go up toward where we're talking about Greenlee that way. That was tabled. There's going to be some information we need to get. And the other item is to put a yellow loading zone parking spot behind Diamondback at the corner of Lunenburg and Stewart Street. And we decided to go ahead and do that. Attended TCTC meeting as the filming person. Went to the Yes Partnership meeting where we had a presentation by Captain Encouragement. So there's a gentleman who does a program that gets kids thinking positive and all that, and he's actually from Kansas City, but he lives locally and does a lot of interesting things as a superhero, and enlists other kids to be superheroes and treat people nicely as opposed to bullying and stuff like that. So it was interesting, an interesting program. And then this afternoon, I attended the Board of Supervisors Transportation Committee. They had a work program for some of the money they're going to spend on with culverts and traffic signal improvements. That's it.
Councilmember Segarini.
Real quickly, I attended the Vision Sonora Marketing Committee meeting on the 11th, 13th, the TCTC meeting, and also attended the City's Planning Commission meeting. This morning I attended the Tuolumne County Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Council. That's it.
Okay. And my report is that last weekend I was asked to be Newsmaker of the Day. Hopefully I represented all of us well. I also took the time to do a ride-along with the police department, and I want to do one with the fire department next. I encourage all of you to do the same. It's interesting. September 6th was the Marijuana Work Group. September 8th was the Tuolumne County Economic Development Authority Board meeting. September 9th, second Saturday, and the Caulfield Park concert. If you all have not been down for what's happening on the second Saturday, whether you have children or not, they would enjoy it. But there's lots of activity down in Caulfield Park now, and there were quite a number of people there. September 12th was Vision Sonora Design Committee. September 13th was the Tuolumne County Chamber Transportation Committee and the Tuolumne County Transportation Council. And September the 14th, we had a City Finance Committee, City Public Works Committee, and that's it. And on that note, the last item is adjournment at 7:35, and we made it with one take.